In the serene village of Umannachi, nestled between rolling hills and winding rivers, Amara was a name that echoed on every tongue. She was the embodiment of beauty, skin as smooth as polished ebony, eyes that sparkled like stars, and a figure so captivating that men, young and old, were left spellbound. Amara, however, was no ordinary woman. Beneath her radiant smile lay a guarded heart, heavy with a secret that cast a shadow over her life. She bore a curse from birth, a venomous breast that could kill any man who dared to touch it. Her mother, now long gone, had whispered the tale of this cruel fate on her deathbed. "You are a blessing to the eyes but a danger to the heart, my child. Avoid love, for it can only bring death." Despite her curse, Amara was a kind soul. She cared deeply for her community, often helping the sick and elderly and teaching children by the riverside. Yet, when it came to matters of love, she was distant and cold, avoiding relationships with any man from Umannachi. "Why does she reject us?" young men would murmur among themselves. "She is proud," the older ones would conclude, not knowing the burden she carried. In Umannachi, suitors for Amara came from all walks of life. Her captivating beauty was a force that made even the proudest men humble. Among them was Abina, the wealthiest bachelor in the Umannachi community. Abina owned vast farmlands, cattle herds, and even traded with distant towns, making him the dream husband for many young women. The daughters of Umannachi whispered and tried to impress him by bringing farm produce and food for him, hoping to catch his attention. Yet, Abina, with all his charm and riches, had his eyes set only Amara. One day, Abina visited Amara in her house, bringing gift items to her hoping to please her, and be friends with her, but instead Amara rejected his gifts and friendship politely and asked him out of her house. Abina was shocked at her refusal and asked the reason she's refusing to be friends with him, and she replied, "I can't give you what you want, Abina." Abina pleaded for reconsideration, but she remained firm and asked him to leave. Another suitor, Ibir, the son of Mazi Udo, had tried his luck weeks earlier. Though not as wealthy as Abina, Ibir was the village's most handsome young man. He was known for his charm, his captivating smile, and his father's growing wealth. Ibir had approached Amara one evening as she fetched water from the stream. "Amara," he said with a playful grin, "you have stolen my sleep. My heart races whenever I see you. Let me make you my wife, and together, we will build a home filled with joy." Amara smiled faintly but shook her head. "Ibir, your words are sweet, but I cannot accept them. My path is different, and I ask that you respect it." Ibir, confident in his charm, leaned closer. "Amara, I am not like the others. I will wait for you, even if it takes a lifetime." Amara's expression turned cold. "Do not waste your time, Ibir. I will not marry you." His confidence wavered, but he pressed on. "But why? Tell me what I lack so I can fix it." Amara's voice was sharp now. "Ibir, it is not about what you lack. The answer is no, and it will remain no. Please leave me in peace." Ibir left with his pride wounded. Amara felt so bad rejecting all the suitors that came for her. Deep down she wanted it, even if it was just friendship, but majority of them came for marriage, not friendships. She wanted to have a male friend, someone she could play with and call a brother, but how would she do that, when they all wanted something else aside from friendship? She stopped keeping male friends after her sad experience with two of her male friends who almost got themselves killed by their lack of self-control. Amara knew her secret was best kept hidden. To protect her people and herself, she resolved never to marry or fall in love, confining herself to fleeting encounters with strangers from distant lands who could never uncover her truth. One fateful market day, Umannachi was abuzz with excitement. The son of the wealthy trader in Umannachi had arrived. Chidi was the son of the chief dozi, the richest man in the community. Chidi was not only from a rich home but also wealthy himself. He studied engineering abroad and was working in one of the thriving oil companies in the city in Nigeria. He was a very handsome man, with a charm that melted hearts. Chidi set his eyes on Amara on the road on his way to his father's house. He couldn't help but notice her dashing beauty. He tried stopping to talk to her on the way, but Amara paid no attention. Arriving at his father's house, his parents were more than elated. The night was a long night. He and his father talked and shared stories of what had been going on in his absence and his life in the UK. The next day was a bright new day. His mother had prepared a delicious meal for him. After eating, he decided to take a stroll round the village. He had missed his roots so much. While he was strolling, his eyes caught Amara. He was captivated. She was everything he had ever dreamed of in a wife. Chidi walked up to her, greeted her and complimented her. She was amazed on hearing his voice. She gave him an audience and they strolled together. They introduced themselves and Amara couldn't help but smile at him. Chidi's voice was a melody, smooth and rich, weaving tales that danced in the air between them. Amara couldn't help but smile as they strolled along the dirt path, her sandals brushing against the red earth of Umannachi. His words painted vivid pictures of his life in the city, how he had worked hard to build himself up, the struggles he faced, and his dreams of contributing to the growth of their community. "I never imagined I'd find myself back here," Chidi admitted, gazing up at the clear night sky. "But I felt something pulling me home. Maybe it was a longing for peace, or maybe fate." He glanced at Amara, his dark eyes holding a warmth that made her pulse quicken. Amara tried to maintain her composure, but her heart betrayed her. For years, she had built walls, shielding herself from anyone who dared to get too close. Her venomous secret had turned her life into a maze of loneliness and sacrifice. Yet, Chidi's gentle demeanor and thoughtful words chipped away at her defenses. "You said you've been away for 9 years, Amara said, her voice soft. "What made you leave?" Chidi's expression turned reflective. "To chase education, opportunities, a better life. But it wasn't just ambition. My mother always told me to seek knowledge and bring it back to the land that raised me. She believed that the world could change if we changed our home first." Amara nodded, feeling a pang of admiration for him. "Your mother is a wise woman. And you, Amara?" Chidi asked, his voice dipping into curiosity. "What keeps you here?" Amara hesitated, her fingers instinctively brushing the edge of her scarf. "I guess, a sense of responsibility. Some things tie you to where you are, no matter how much you wish otherwise." Chidi noticed the shadow in her eyes but chose not to press further. Instead, he let the conversation flow back to lighter topics, sharing humorous anecdotes of his life in the city and eliciting bursts of laughter from Amara. By the time they reached her house, the moon was high, casting a silver glow over the thatched roofs and quiet streets. "I'm glad I stopped you today," Chidi said, his tone sincerely. "You've made my return feel less lonely." Amara smiled but said nothing, her heart conflicted. As much as she enjoyed his company, her secret loomed like a dark cloud. She could not let herself grow attached. Over the next few weeks, their friendship deepened. Chidi's presence became a constant in her life, whether through long conversations under the mango tree or quiet moments of shared laughter. He made her feel alive in a way she hadn't in years. Yet, every time he reached out, offering a hand, a smile, or a gesture of closeness, Amara withdrew, her fear gripping her like a vice. But Chidi was patient. He saw the cracks in her armor and sensed the pain she tried so hard to conceal. One day, as they sat by the riverbank, Skipping stones across the water, he turned to her, his expression serious. Amara, I don't know what's holding you back, but I want you to know something, he said. Whatever it is, you don't have to face it alone. I'm here. Her chest tightened, tears threatening to spill. She wanted to believe him, to trust in his words, but how could she? How could she explain that her body was a weapon, that her very touch could bring death? Chidi, she began, her voice trembling, there's so much you don't know about me. Things I can't. Before she could finish, Chidi reached out and took her hand gently in his. For a moment, her heart stopped. Her instinct was to pull away, to scream at him to let go, but something in his gaze rooted her to the spot. I don't care about the past, he said firmly. All I care about is the person in front of me. Amara's heart shattered under the weight of his words. She had never met anyone so unafraid, so willing to embrace her despite the danger. But what would happen if he discovered the truth? Could she risk it? For the first time, Amara realized that she was at a crossroads. She could continue running, hiding behind her curse, or she could take a chance, a dangerous, terrifying chance, on the possibility of love. The decision would change her life. For months, Amara and Chidi's friendship blossomed like the morning hibiscus, vivid and full of life. They spent countless hours together, exchanging stories, hopes, and laughter. Chidi's kindness and patience slowly chipped away at Amara's fears, leaving her vulnerable to emotions she had buried for years. Chidi often visited her small hut, sitting on the woven mat outside as they talked into the late hours of the night. He spoke about his dreams of building a school in Uminachi, a place where children could learn without having to leave their community. Amara admired his vision, and in those moments, her heart softened further. One evening, as the rain patted gently against the thatched roof, Chidi arrived unannounced. His face lit up as he saw her, and Amara felt a warmth she hadn't felt in years. They sat inside her small hut, talking as usual, but this time there was something different, a tension in the air, a pull neither of them could resist. Chidi's gaze lingered on her, his words trailing off. Amara, you're special, he whispered, reaching out to touch her face. I don't know what I'd do without you. Amara hesitated, her heart racing. Her mind screamed at her to stop, to remember the curse she carried, but her emotions overpowered her logic. She wanted to feel normal, to feel loved, even if just for a moment. As the rain poured outside, Chidi and Amara crossed a line that should never have been crossed. In the small, intimate space of her hut, they gave into the emotions that had been building between them. But moments later, everything changed. Chidi's body stiffened, his eyes wide with shock. He stumbled backward, clutching his chest as if he were struggling to breathe. Amara's joy turned to horror as she saw him collapse, his body hitting the ground with a lifeless thud. No, Chidi, she screamed, rushing to his side. She shook him, calling his name, but there was no response. Tears streamed down her face as she cried for help, her voice piercing the quiet night. The villagers arrived quickly, their lanterns casting eerie shadows against the hut's walls. They found Amara kneeling over Chidi's body, her hands trembling as she tried to explain. What happened? An elder demanded, his voice sharp with urgency. Amara's lips quivered, her voice barely above a whisper. It's my fault. I tried to warn him, but I couldn't stop it. Chidi's parents arrived shortly after, their faces pale with fear and confusion. His mother wailed at the sight of her son, crumpling to the ground in grief. His father stood frozen, his fists clenched as he demanded answers. Amara, what did you do to my son? He bellowed. Amara couldn't hold back any longer. She knew she owed Chidi and his family the truth, even if it meant exposing the dark secret she had carried for years. "I'm cursed," she confessed, her voice breaking. "My body, my breasts, they are venomous. Anyone who touches me dies. That's why I've stayed away from everyone, why I've rejected suitors. I didn't want this to happen." The crowd erupted into chaos. Some wept openly, mourning Chidi's untimely death. Others whispered in hushed tones, their eyes filled with fear and suspicion. "Why didn't you tell him?" Chidi's father demanded, his voice shaking with anger. "I tried," Amara sobbed. "I let my guard down, and now he's gone." The villagers looked at her with a mix of pity and resentment. Some murmured about driving her out of the community, calling her a danger to everyone. Others argued that she had suffered enough, living a life of isolation and fear. Chidi's mother, tears streaming down her face, knelt beside her son's lifeless body. "He loved you," she whispered, her voice thick with grief. "And he died for that love." Amara's heart shattered at the words. She had always feared this moment, but she never imagined it would hurt this much. The love she had fought so hard to suppress had destroyed the one person who had seen past her curse and into her heart. The elders gathered to discuss what should be done, both about Amara and the tragedy that had unfolded. As the villagers debated her fate, Amara sat alone, clutching the scarf she had worn to shield herself from the world. Thank you for watching. Let's know the fate of Amara in the next part. Share and subscribe. Bye bye.